time really does fly. Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. We are getting very close or almost at the exact halfway point of the year, so I wanted to go ahead and do a mid-year check-in. I'm not going to do the mid-year freak-out tag exactly. I do have that in here with some of the questions, not all of them, but I also have some stuff like how many pages I've read, authors I've read, milestones that I want to get to, goals for the rest of the year, all that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and jump into some of those stats. So far this year, I have read 34 books, which is definitely ahead of pace for me. Now, some of those are novellas, so definitely take that with a little pinch of salt. But yeah, that is definitely ahead of pace for me. That comes out to be just under 12,000 pages, which once again, if that keeps up, will definitely be the most I have read in a year by a couple thousand pages. This year has just been really good. I had one month that really kind of pushed me over the top, and I'll get to what month that was. But yeah, overall, we're at 12,000 pages, which I think is pretty good. With 34 books read, I have given, or my average rating is exactly 3.5%, or a 3.5 star rating, which is pretty cool. That's, I'm a pretty hard grader, so that's about right. Maybe actually a little higher than I would expect. I try to treat it kind of like a bell curve. So only the very, very top percentage of books get a one star, and the same thing with 5 stars. So, only a couple books get those. With that being said, I have actually given out 3 5-star books this year, which is a lot for me. I looked, and in the past 2 years, I think I had only given out 3 in the past 2 years. So the fact that I've already given out 3 this year is pretty incredible. And those books were Tiamat's Wrath by James S.A. Corey, which is book 8 of The Expanse. Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson, which is book 2 of the Stormlight Archive. And then the third one was Boy's Life by Robert McCannon, and I read that before I started my channel. And all 3 of those got 5-star ratings for me, which means I love them. And I love them all in different ways, which is kind of funny. They're all just different enough that they're all, have a different kind of love from me. So that's kind of cool to have that. My most read author this year is Brandon Sanderson, with 7 things I've read from him. Some of those do include like novellas and like short stories that he has. So, take that with a little bit of grain of salt. And then I have also read 6 James Bond books this year by Ian Fleming. So I think he might technically have it for actual novel length books, even though those are also, pretty short as well. The longest book I have read is Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson, and this is all coming from Goodreads stats, so it might depend on your copy or whatever, but that book comes out to 1,087 pages, which is definitely a long book. I wonder if it's the longest. No, I think War and Peace is probably longer. I did read that, and I think maybe it is closer to 1,100 pages. I should look and see what actually is the longest book I've read, but this one is probably, top 3 or 5 longest books I've read. The shortest book I've read is the 11th Metal by Brandon Sanderson. Also funny, he's got the longest and the shortest, and that is only like 21 pages. So like I said, 34 books, but I'm counting books like that, which are, barely a chapter in most books. So definitely a little bit skewed. I think the page count is probably a better indicator of how much I've read this year at like 12,000 pages, like I said. The oldest published book I've read this year is Goldfinger by Ian Fleming, and that was published in 1959. I've definitely read older books than that in the past, but I think it's kind of cool to look and see how far into the past you're dipping. I know I do really like classics, and I haven't read as many classics this year as I normally would have. I've kind of put them on the back burner to get through some of the fantasy and science fiction stuff I wanted to get to, but classics are definitely something I would love to get back to. Some of my favorite books of all time are classics. And then my best reading month by page count is definitely the month of February. I finished 10 books in the month of February, which is crazy, and that was 3,367 pages. I didn't technically start and finish every book that I read that month. I think some bled over from January, but still, in all, I went crazy in the month of February. I guess I just had a lot of time to sit and read. So yeah, that was pretty cool. Now I'll transition over and do some of the more traditional mid-year freak-out tag questions. They're fun. I'm not going to do all of them, but I deleted some that I didn't like and added a few of my own. So let's go ahead. And the first question is, what is the best book you've read so far this year? And for me, this is very easy. That is is Tie Matt's Wrath by James S.A. Corey. I gave this book an easy 5-star, like I mentioned earlier, and it is actually my second favorite book of all time. I think it is the first book to be ranked that high since like 2020. So yeah, this was a really special book for me. I did a full spoiler review for it. It's one of the first videos I did, and that actually might be like my favorite video I've made. No, I didn't hold back because I was just spoiling everything and just, I don't know, had a great time like getting my thoughts out on that. So if you have read that, I definitely recommend going and watching that video because I don't know, I just had a lot of fun talking about it. And it's definitely a book that I still think a lot about. I was out just the other day riding around on my motorcycle and my mind was wandering, and somehow I came back to that book and just how special I thought it was, which is, you know, that's how you know it's a really special book. The next question is, what is the biggest disappointment that I read this year? And I narrowed it down to 2. I think I know which way I'm leaning, but I wanted to mention both of them because they're disappointing for different reasons. The first one I will mention is Jaws. And I did a review for Jaws as well, and Jaws was disappointing because I liked the movie so much, and the movie is so good. And the book is not nearly as good. There are some really high peaks, and then there are some really low lows with Jaws. And so it's kind of disappointing because I went into it, you know, I was going to the beach and I was like, oh, I'm gonna read Jaws, that'll be cool, it'll be a classic. And you know, reading it at the beach will be cool, and it just wasn't. You know, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in Jaws that I didn't care about, didn't need to be in the book, didn't really help you know, any part of the plot, the story, anything like that. I could have just completely done without it. So that is a little bit unfortunate. And unfortunately, the other book that I'm going to mention is You Only Live Twice. I haven't done a review for this one yet. I'll be doing it soon, I think. And this was the most recent James Bond novel I read, and it also is the conclusion of what is known as the Blofeld trilogy, and that is just the villain of this little 3-book arc that you get. That, you know, he's the through-line villain, which is different. A lot of the Bond books, you know, you kind of have one villain per book, or, you know, and it switches up. And unfortunately, that book just really let me down. And I think the worst part about it is that the start of it is so good. It's giving you a lot of characterization of Bond and how he's feeling after the events of the previous book, and then the ball is just dropped so hard. And I think, unfortunately, I only have 2 Ian Fleming novels left, and I think, unfortunately, they're probably going to let me down too. It makes me a little sad because I have enjoyed so much of that series. There's a lot of nostalgia there for me. I watched a lot of the movies growing up, and so reading them has been a lot of fun, but I think the best is probably behind me as far as those books go. So I think as a disappointment, since I did actually like Jaws, I will give it to You Only Live Twice, unfortunately. Next up is what was my biggest surprise? And this, I think, is going to be a surprising answer, but it is Tie Matt's Wrath by James S.A. Corey. I was blown away by this book. I didn't expect it at all. It surprised me because it was so good. And that might sound like a negative about the rest of The Expanse, and that's not the case. I did like The Expanse as a whole series, but this book is such a shining star compared to some of the other ones that it's just so far and above better than a lot of them that it's not even close for me. And that was such a surprise, especially because I was very lukewarm. I wasn't lukewarm. I didn't like 70% of book 7, and I did like the last 30% of it. So my hopes were kind of high, but I was optimistic, or cautiously optimistic, coming into book 8. And Tie Matt's Wrath, like I said earlier, was just so fantastic that it really did surprise me. It's my biggest surprise. I didn't think a single book in The Expanse was going to get a 5-star for me, especially one so late in. I thought I kind of was used to the writing style, used to the storytelling. That just wasn't the case. The book 8, Tie Matt's Wrath, was just fantastic. So that is my biggest surprise for sure. The next question is, favorite new author, either a debut author or new to you. And I'm going to cheat here a little bit and say Brandon Sanderson. I had not read any standalone Sanderson stuff until this year. I had read the last 3 of Wheel of Time books that he did, but you know, I think he really had a lot of help from Robert Jordan's notes and also Harriet's influence on those books. So I didn't want to count those. And then I also read another book, the original, I think, by him, but that was also co-authored with somebody else. So it wasn't anything that he had ever done completely solo until this year, and I started my Sanderson journey. And yeah, so I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit and say that, even though I have kind of experienced his writing before. If I'm not going to count him, I'm going to mention Robert McCannon again. He wrote Boy's Life, which was another one of my 5 stars, and obviously I really loved that book, and I would like to read more of him. I think, I forget the name of the book that it gets compared to The Stand a lot. Maybe Swan Song? I think it's Swan Song. That is another book that I really want to read by him. And so yeah, even though it's only the one entry by him, the fact that he got a 5-star from me is fantastic. And so I'm going to chop him into my new favorite author for this year. Next is my new favorite character. And I think if I have to pick one character, man, this is really tough. So I'll list out the ones I'm kind of considering. It's Shallan, Dalinar, Sazed. Dalinar and Shallan are from Stormlight Archive, Sazed from Mistborn Era 1. And then basically all of the main characters from The Expanse, which is a little bit cheating because I didn't start that series this year. So I don't know. I'm going to throw them in here, but specifically Avasarala, Bobby, and Holden. Yeah, and if I have to cut it down, it's really between Shallan and Sazed. And I think I'm going to have to go with Shallan, which if you had told me I was going to like somebody more than Sazed after the end of Era 1, I wouldn't have believed you. But yeah, I think Shallan, if you watch my Words of Radiance review, I gush about her enough there, so I don't think I'm going to do it too much here, but I just really loved the character arc and the character she's developing to be in that series. I'm hoping that she doesn't betray me, or Sanderson, I guess, doesn't betray me with her. Yeah, that will be my new favorite character, with all those other being really strong honorable mentions who could, if I did a list of those characters, that'd probably be one of the toughest lists I've ever made, because I love all of those characters for different reasons. Next, let's talk about characters I hate so far from this year. And pretty much everyone from Jaws. I guess Brody, our main character, is kind of okay, but if you do watch that review, I do talk about how every character in that book has a huge flaw or just something that makes them really unlikable and irredeemable. Brody just is ready to fight everybody. He kind of has an excuse because he's like the sheriff, but he's like constantly just ready to fight. The scientist guy, who I can't remember his name from the book, unfortunately, he's a jerk. Brody's wife is just awful. That whole book is just filled with characters who you'll hate, and you kind of root for the shark. You're kind of wanting the shark to win, because all the characters kind of suck. So I kind of hated all of them, but one character I really, really hated, and this is a character from the last book of The Expanse in Leviathan Falls, and her name is Tanaka. I think she was a completely pointless character to add into the story. I don't think she added that much. I hated everything from her motivation. And there is, I've read online like a specific point that the authors were trying to get across with this character. I can't really go into it because it's just like massive spoilers for the last book in a series. But the point they are trying to convey through her, I just did not land for me. And that was I hated everything about that character, and I wish she wasn't in the books. This is a question that I came up with, and that is the best adaptation I've watched so far this year. And I don't think I have watched too many, so I'm going to give it to The Last of Us. I thought it was pretty good. I did have some issues with some of the episodes. I don't think they did the best job of establishing the relationship between Joel and Ellie. I think it could have been better. But overall, I mean, I think, as far as video game adaptations go, it was, one of the better ones, and it's still like a B+ show for me. I don't think I can't remember when House of the Dragon came out, but I didn't watch it this year. But I'm just going to shout it out here because House of the Dragon was an amazing adaptation. I think the changes that they made were brilliant, and that show, the acting is incredible, costumes, setting, CGI, the story itself, everything about that is fantastic. If you have not watched House of the Dragon, go watch it. Next up is books that made you cry, and I think Tiamat's Wrath maybe got me like a little misty-eyed. I don't think I actually cried, but Boy's Life by Robert McKinnon, I think it made me cry twice. I think I have a message somewhere to some of my friends saying that this book made me cry twice. And specifically, there's a scene that I just personally reflected to a lot. It was really similar to moving away, or just moving as a kid and stuff, and having that coming of age moments and all that kind of stuff. It just hit home, and yeah, it definitely made me a little teary-eyed. Next is the most beautiful book you have gotten this year. The Secret Project books are close, but for me, it is still this, God Killer by Hannah Tanner. This is still my cover of the year. I don't know why. I think it is beautiful. You got a nice wraparound, and I don't know. The deer and everything on it just works perfectly for me, and I have yet to read this, but I just love the cover so much that I think this is easily the most beautiful book. I know a lot of people are probably going to pick some special editions or the secret projects, but this is just the standard, nothing fancy. I think there's an edition where it has sprayed edges and stuff that looks awesome too, but this is just like the plain hardcover, and I think it looks awesome. And to finish off with probably the toughest question, what do I need to read for the rest of this year? And I have a lot. Just as much as Sanderson as I can. You know, my goal is to read it all this year, and I have 6 months to do it. I think I can do it, but I'm also prepared that I might have some burnout from Sanderson or just need a break from it. And if that happens, I definitely won't get it in all this year, but my goal is to get as much of it as possible for this year. I would also like to maybe start Robin Hobb. I think I have Assassin's Apprentice already. I think I own that. That being said, I also own Garden of the Moon, so maybe I'll start Malazan this year. All the Spiffo books that I made a video about that I want to read, you know, I'd like to get to some of those. I don't think I'll get all to them this year. I do definitely want to get to some of those. I need to finish James Bond, which I'm so close to doing. I would like to start The Five Warrior Angels by Brian Lee Durfee. I would like to read Sun Eater by Christopher Rocchio. Yeah, I'd like to maybe get Cradle. I have all the Cradle books, so I'd like to get to that. There's just so much. And of course, I have got to mention The Ships of Marior by Jenny Wertz. I need to finish this at some point this year. Hopefully I can do it. I have faith that in 6 months I can read the rest of that book. But thanks for watching. If you liked this video, go ahead and leave it a like and subscribe while you're down there. And if you have any comments to leave, go ahead. I definitely will get back to you on anything. Let me know what your favorite book of the year so far is, and have a good one.